Hello there, namaste. So it's been a minute, so I might go off on random tangents or who knows. I just a lot of things going on, But this is the untold story of idol worship. And yeah, I might have a conflicting opinions on this just because of my perspective on idol worship because, well, it's just different opinions. But who knows? Yeah, I am interested in knowing and learning. I'm most likely going to need to split this into two parts because it's just going to be too much.
If you visit any ancient temple in Bharat, which is at the very least 300 to 400 years old or even older, there is a fair amount of chance that you would come across these kinds of vandalized idols. And also it's a well-known fact that because of Islamic invasions, a significant amount of art and architecture of Bharat has been vandalized because of the contentious views and beliefs of the invaders on idol worship. This short doc film is aimed at bringing a holistic understanding of the past, present and the future as far as these contentions go. We tried our best to bring forward the story in the most respectable format without denigrating any community or religion. And I request you strictly to refrain any kind of derogatory comments and to uphold the decorum of this channel. Let's get.
I like that. I like how they do that at the beginning. That's very respectful because honestly, seeing the pieces destroyed, I mean, like what was it the Pope did when he went up and down the halls of the Vatican and started destroying art pieces because he felt like they were degrading or showed parts of the male body that didn't belong there. It's just like that is history being destroyed because of his personal perspective. And that's the thing, it always has to go down with a personal perspective. It's never a whole concept. It's just everyone has their own unique views on things, no matter where they're from. Everyone's got different perspectives, whether someone's a complete atheist, whether they're from the completely different belief, whether they're agnostic, is that the term, where they don't believe in anything, but they're okay with people believing whatever. Yeah, it's always interesting and fascinating how for some reason, some people, and then when someone does something or a group of people start preaching hate or things like that, people always look at everything as a whole. Like if one group starts doing something bad, everyone who identifies as a part of that group sees them as the same, even though people who are a part of that group will say, oh, no, that's not what it's about. That is not what it's about. It's kind of sad because people close their minds to it because they see one thing and then that's all they ever believe.
Get started. Following our traditional template, let's cut this doc film into 3 chapters for ease of understanding. The first chapter, let's try and understand the history of contentions on idol worship. Why at all idol worship has been contentious? Back in history, what are its origins? Moving to the second chapter, discovering the universal truth. Forget about idol worship for a minute. Why do people worship at all? There is one truth that runs around the world as an answer to the question that why do people worship at all in first place? Let's see that in chapter number 2. Third and the last chapter is on the Bharatiya philosophy on idol worship. And this chapter is very crucial and acts as a foundation if one wants to understand the grandeur of Bharatiya temples, then we should understand the Bharatiya philosophy behind that in first place. And that's what we're going to see in chapter number 3. And that is the sum and substance of this doc film. And
yeah, because that's one thing I do want to know. So pretty much the third part is what I really want to know. It seems like that's always what I'm eager in. Yeah, so I'm going to be splitting this into probably 2 parts because I'm going to be talking quite a bit. But it's fascinating to know why it's done. Because if there's something you believe in, you would think something all powerful, but maybe it's the symbology of having, I mean, heck, I'm wearing a cross right here. So it's probably like the same kind of concept. It's probably the same kind of concept, just a different perspective going at it.
Before we move forward, there is one very important reason, rather a pertinent one as well, as to why I chose to make a doc film on this topic. And I'll reveal that as we move forward. So let's get started. The first chapter, let's try and understand the history of contentions on idol worship. Around the world in the history of humankind, worshipping a deity, the form of an idol, is nothing special at all. Every culture in every part of the world had their own manifestations, cultures, ways and means of worshipping different kinds of deities. Strictly speaking, this topic is not worth a topic where you can learn something new. This is a very bland topic in my opinion, because every culture has their own ways and means of worshipping, and why should anyone have a problem with other culture?
Exactly. It's better to just learn and understand and just hear someone's perspective. That's why I always find it like when you hear like people invaded and then destroyed things because they didn't see eye to eye. And it's happened with multiple different beliefs or claiming of beliefs, because you'll hear people say one thing and it's like, I mean, I was just talking with my fiance earlier about things, and I'm like, oh, they say that, but they are definitely not that, because what they're saying right there is completely against what it actually is. I worked in a place like this, and I could tell you flat out that 75 of the people there that said they were this were not. Because you could just tell. You can tell how people live their lives, their personal lives, instead of, following what they believe. They just do what is expected, and then as soon as they leave the building, they turn back into the original piece of trash they are. And it's just like, and honestly, that's bad of me to say too. I mean, that's not considered a good thing. I mean, I'm not supposed to look at other people and judge, and it's just not something I'm supposed to do. But, I'm human. To err is human.
In first place. But nonetheless, let's try and understand where it started. Some 3,500 years back in time, that's around 1500 BCE and thereabouts, a group of people called Israelites, led by a man called Moses, started their journey from Egypt towards the east in search of a new homeland. And the story of this community called Israelites is what later developed into a religion called as Judaism, and from it originated Christianity and Islam as well. All three put together are called as Abrahamic religions, as we all know. To put a very long story in simple terms, Moses is revered as a prophet in all three Abrahamic religions, and especially in Judaism. He is revered as the first prophet. And Moses wanted his community, the Israelites, who were under slavery back then in Egypt, and lead them to a new homeland, under the revelation and the instructions from a God called Jehovah. Moses manages to lead his entire community out of Egypt in search of a new homeland, and in their journey, he strictly instructs the entire Israelite community to worship no one other than Jehovah. However, during the journey, the Israelite
well, that's not entirely accurate, but I get what he's saying. He's trying to generalize the whole thing. I mean, there's 3 different beliefs that come off of it, or technically 4 if you include the Mormonism. So, or 5, 6. Crap, there's so many offshoots from it. But yeah, I can kind of get what he's coming from that.
Community makes an idol of a golden calf or a golden cow or a bull, whatever it could be, a bovine basically. And then they start worshipping this golden bovine. And that is when Moses strictly implements punishment for those who resorted this. And from then on, idol worship has been absolutely
incorrect, but it's probably one of the other scriptures he's going off of. He broke the 10 commandments and then walked back up at the mountain. That's what happened.
Forbidden in Judaism. And the same ideology was inherited into Christianity and Islam as well. And this golden calf episode from the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament of Bible is essentially the origins of why the Abrahamic religions were against idol worship. Idol worship is considered as an unpardonable offense in all these 3 religions. Now, good for them, and I have no interest in criticizing any of these, as you might know. But
it's primarily just seen as putting something in front of what you believe. Instead of just believing in the thing completely, you're putting something in front of it. You're saying that this in front of you is more powerful or has as much power. That's literally the whole concept of it in the belief is like, oh, you're praying to this, not to God on high. You're praying to this. That's only the concept. At least that's how it's interpreted. Yeah. But I can say that there are a few things, but honestly, I haven't completely. Well, I've read a few of the others, but it could be completely different. And every single Bible or whichever print it's in, whichever way it's translated, all say it completely differently. So in the end, I can't say for sure exactly what is right or wrong. I didn't live back then. And it's only what we can do from the translations that we are given.
Problem is, when this ideology was imposed on Bharat, or for that matter, rest of many parts of the world where colonization happened, like the pagan religions and cultures in Europe, or in Africa, or in the Americas or Australia, the local religions and cultures, the art and architecture suffered a lot. And a good live example is hundreds of temples across Bharat, which are vandalized. One of the prime reasons is the aversion towards idol worship from this ideology is fundamentally the root cause. And let me also make my position very clear. We are no way disrespecting or disregarding any religion or ideology. If idol worship is forbidden in a religion or a group of religions, good for them. But vandalism can...
Yes, agreed. Vandalism should never be accepted. Never. I mean, even if something... Okay, I gotta say this correctly, because even if something's seen as like completely wrong, completely, absolutely wrong, like what is it, the Nazi Bible, that I could understand destroying that kind of literature, that kind of thing, because hatred begets hatred, and you just don't want to lead that. But yeah, you never want to create. You will never want to destroy something of someone else. If someone is doing you no harm, why would you ever try to denigrate them? Why would you ever try to destroy them or break them? Just, it's better to learn from them, to accept and grow. Even if you never see eye to eye, you still get to learn so much more. Or just completely have interesting discussions. I mean, heck, when I was in college, I had an atheist who was a roommate, and it was some of the best conversations I had with him, because he just found it all so ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And it was just interesting to talk with him and get his perspective, because in the end, science, and I know it's seen as, a lot of people get mad, but it's like science was his belief, and science is not always accurate. I mean, what is it? The tomb of Tut has been redone and what is it? Crap. And they found out, oh, it's this old. No, it's this old. No, it's this old. Oh, no. And it's like, you can never be completely accurate, because it's a humans who are doing it. And but it's interesting, always interesting to kind of see other perspectives. But I don't think he's being disrespectful. I kind of think he's trying to be, because he knows that this could be a very, very controversial topic. But he's just trying to disavow the destruction of other people's beliefs. That's what he's going for, if anything.
Never be justified. And with all due respect towards every religion and culture, we are trying to make this doc film to bring a clear-cut awareness about the history and the present and future as well. So that is a brief history of why idol worship was very contentious. And also, by extension, idol worship in this context doesn't limit only to a physical manifestation of a deity, like a sculpture. It goes beyond that, like worshipping a tree or a mountain or a river, worshipping parts of nature. It is also forbidden and is equally considered as an unpardonable offense from the...
I don't, well, I honestly am not entirely sure. I don't know. Well, I know they're like holy rivers and like things like that, but it's like, I never thought people would pray to it, but I guess they're all different kinds. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say there are people who pray to nature and things like that, but then again, nature is amazing. I mean, who doesn't love being out in nature? Yeah, it's one of the best things.
These ideologies. So now let's get to the second chapter, discovering the universal truth. It's all about a very pertinent question that we all should ask ourselves. In Bharat, we have a diverse set of cultures where people worship trees, rivers, mountains,
oh, there we go,
different kinds of animals, needless to mention, cow, different deities and different kinds of manifestations, elements of nature, and the list goes on and on. Let's try to take a step back and ask one simple and a basic question. Why do people worship at all? And for the next couple of minutes, let's try to probe into this question and why.
Oof, this is going to be a hefty one, because everyone's got their own kind of answer to it. that everyone does, even those who refuse to believe that they worship. Like I said, the atheists who choose to trust in, which there's nothing wrong with wanting to trust in humans over a belief. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, this is going to be a very loaded one. I'm curious on how he's going to go about it.
While doing so, don't try to act secular. Because if you try to act secular, then your ability to think will drastically drop. Holding to our question of why do people worship at all in first place, let's try to expand our premise out of Bharat. If
Stonehenge? Okay. I don't know. I just thought that like Gandalf the White, Stonehenge, that's probably very rude to think, but it just just looks that way.
If we turn back the pages of the history of humankind, be it the pagan traditions in Europe or the Native American cultures or the Africans or the Australian Aboriginals, this concept of worshipping exists throughout the history of humankind. So let us expand the premise of our question. Not just in Bharat, but around the world, people worship different kinds of things like rivers, mountains, animals, deities from the respective cultures, and so on. Why so? For thousands of years around the world, people have been continuously in search of better food, better shelter, and better clothing, and a better lifestyle. So all this fits very logically. But then, one pattern of worshipping, what explains that? And if one tries to observe with that question and a perspective, this 5-step pattern would possibly emerge as an answer. And these are my observations that I would like to share with you. Let us take sun. Sun is a very common deity in many cultures around the world. So now let us try to...
Because without it, we would not be here. Life exists only because of it. Well, and the multitude of other things that happened in order for life to be on this planet. But yeah, if not everything was in line, nothing would exist on this planet. But yeah, the sun is a key factor.
To retro-simulate the thought process of our ancestors. And I'm not referring only to Bharat, but around the world. Why is that people worshipped sun? So let's take a practical example. So here we go. The first and basic state of mind of early men and women would be of ignorance. I don't know what sun, other than the fact that it's a shiny object up there in the sky that is giving me light and heat. I don't know what is sun. That's where we all would have started. Slowly over the time, the early men and women,
Did they know that the sun was producing heat? I mean, I'm pretty sure they knew that. That is actually an interesting question. What did they know that the sun actually did? Did they know that heat came from the sun? Did they know that the lights around the planet actually came from the sun? I mean, you would think that this little light source up in the sky, I mean, if you try to think back in the day, you wouldn't think it'd be capable of all that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm in the ignorance portion to that because I never really gave it much thought. I just know what the sun does. Oh, education has really ruined me.
Experienced sun. When they went on a quest for food and when the sun shines bright, there is a good amount of chance that the nature around us would blossom and there you get fruits and vegetables and all.
Okay.
And on the flip side, if the sun doesn't shine because of rainy season or during the winter, the availability of food drops. Now all this is from one part of the climate.
Okay, now it makes so much sense because it's the ignorance is like the sun, and then you start seeing what the sun does because the experience of having it, not having it, it being blocked. What? Okay. So he's really expanding on it. I'm like, oh, okay. Now his entire pillar of reasoning starts to make sense. Yeah, because I never thought about it.
Of the world. In other parts of the world, summers you might not get food, and winter you might get food. Bottom line is, I experience the fact that sun is the source of my food on earth. And this experience, which evolves from ignorance, is the second state of mind. Up next is the third state of mind that evolves from experience, which is gratitude. Sun might be a shiny little thing up there in the sky, but depending on the fact that whether sun is shining or not, it is directly impacting whether I'll be able to get food for my stomach or not. What kind of clothing I would need, what kind of shelter that I need to build. I realize that sun has a straight and direct impact on all these aspects of my survival and life. So I wait with a sense of gratitude for it to shine or not shine, depending on which part of the world I'm living in. For my existence, for me to survive and for me to live, I wait with gratitude for this little shiny object to shine or not shine. And when the gratitude intensifies, that evolves into another state of mind, that is respect. I
Respect for the
realize the
sun.
fact that I am alive only because of sun. And when this state of mind, the fourth state of respect, further intensifies, that evolves into an emotion called devotion. I prostrate to sun. I worship sun because me and everything around me is existing only because of sun. When I realize this fact with a deep sense of emotion, that's when I start worshipping sun and I get devoted to sun. Now this 5-step evolution from
That makes a lot of sense. I'm not gonna lie, because I was at the very beginning and just go like, I never thought about it. But yeah, he really went into it, because it's like you have the ignorance of it, but you start seeing the world around you be influenced by it. You start being thankful for it, that it all leads up to like you end up worshiping it. If you don't understand what the ball of the gas in the sky, what it actually is there for, or the reason for it or anything, you will see it as something supernatural, because it's like, how can that be? I mean, even now it's like, how can that be? I'm not an astrologist or astrologer or whatever. I don't know how the science of the gas of the sun and everything, how it works, how it doesn't expunge all its energy. I don't know. I'm not meant to know. I don't learn that kind of thing, but it is fascinating.
From ignorance to experience to gratitude to respect and finally to devotion. This is why, possibly and logically, around the world, people worship different kinds of entities. Tribal people in the forest worship mountains, rivers, and trees. A fisherman might worship a river or sea. A carpenter might worship his tools. Everywhere, the common pattern is when that object of worship or the entity of worship is deeply connected to the life and livelihood of a person, that is when people worship that specific entity. Let us take a more relatable example. When we were just born, we are in a state of ignorance. We don't know anyone, we don't know anything other than our mother and of course father as well. That is the first state of mind, ignorance. And then slowly evolves experience. As we grow and we get toys and gifts and clothes and presents from our parents, we experience all that sweetness. And as we further grow, get into teenage and becomes more matured, we feel that gratitude towards our parents. And once we get into our own job or business, and when we start earning and paying our own bills, then we might realize the hardships of our parents in raising us. And then we are going to develop a real and deep respect for our parents. And finally, when that emotion intensifies, and when you really miss your parents, that is when you get devoted to your parents. So all in all, this 5-step evolution of ignorance, experience, gratitude, respect, and devotion. This pattern.
I like that he used it as like the mind of a child going through that. I mean, getting to devoted to my parents, I don't think so. Respect them, yeah, absolutely. But devotion, I think, would be a little too far. Devotion is, for me, seems like a very loaded word. Respect, absolutely. That's perfect right there. Respect is just a nice, calm word, a nice good word to use. Devotion just sounds like crossing a line for me, but I like the fact that it's the term of you are a child, you have ignorance, then you get experience, then you get gratitude, then you get respect. I can see that as he's saying that. I can get my mind wrapped around that. It's like, oh, I was a kid at this point. That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Perfectly fits around the world in whichever culture you take, in whichever entity or an object that you are devoted towards. This is possibly the logic and reason behind this question of why people worship. And if we take the Bharatiya context of worshipping sun as Surya Bhagavan, where sun is deified as Surya Bhagavan, and there are great and grand temples dedicated for Surya Bhagavan.
He says great and grand temples, and you see that one's all run down, half destroyed. Probably burned at one point in time. It's just so sad to see. So sad to see. I mean, the Romans, like, no, that's a bad thing to say. The Romans had the right concept where they adopted Christianity and then turned it's a very loaded topic. I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, it's oh my gosh, it's sad to see because that does look beautiful.
And people worship him. And if one takes a closer and deeper look into the philosophy of worshipping Surya Bhagavan, astonishing details will be revealed. Surya Bhagavan has been the central deity in development of mathematics in Bharat. And not just in the field of science, in terms of spirituality as well. Every dawn and dusk, as part of Sandhya Vandanam, along with Gayatri Mantram, people worship Surya Bhagavan. Both.
Yeah, that's the thing I absolutely love. If you actually look at it, people who worshipped and committed their lives to that stuff, they actually learned to study it. They got far further in knowledge than most other cultures because they were focused on one thing, one aspect, whether it was the stars in the sky, whether it was the movement of the sun, whether it was the rotation of the earth. People knew things far sooner than it was discovered in, I guess I'll just, in quotations, Western culture. Like, people I'm pretty sure, way in advance knew what gravity was before Newton kind of decided to jot it down. There's no way anyone ever said that there's a reason things drop to the ground. There's no way no one ever thought of that before. There's no way. I don't believe that Newton was absolutely the first. I think he was the first to write it down and bring it before everyone. It's just one of those things I personally believe. But yeah, it's because you study the world. I mean, what the Aztecs had all these calendars written, and of course, they had jotted down the future. Not that the future would end. It's just they were eradicated before they continued because they were keeping it down. They were counting the stars. They were keeping track of things, and it's fascinating to realize just how much people knew even before we became aware of it because it wasn't widely spread. Say what you want about colonization, they at least helped with bringing some kind of education to the rest of the world. I don't know. Sure, a lot of their education was way behind and they were discovering things that had already been discovered in other places of the world, but at least it kind of became somewhat centralized, and now the internet is here, and for some reason, I feel like a lot of us are just getting dumber because of it. I seriously believe that because it's like I have access to everything I could possibly want to know, and I don't learn nothing. I mean, that's why I feel like I need to watch these things. It's like I want to know at least something because I don't want to be stuck in the ignorance portion my entire life. Yeah.
Spiritually and scientifically, the worship of Surya Bhagavan in the history of Bharat is very wide, deep, and complex. And the temples dedicated for Surya Bhagavan, for instance, the Martand Sun Temple of Kashmir, what you're seeing here, is vandalized. Now, what logic or reason?
See, I said it. It was vandalized. Oh, that's sad. That's sad.
Explains vandalizing such great and grand structures, which are historically, spiritually, and scientifically deeply rooted into the culture of Bharat. Now, what explains the logic and reason behind this vandalism? Think about it. So that's about this chapter on the question of why do people worship, and because of this 5-step evolution. And this is the universal truth, but this is just half of the truth, one side of the coin. But the other side of the coin shows another pattern as well. Ignorance, experience, insecurity, fear, and superstition. People can worship sun because of superstition as well. Now the reason for why people worship could be either because of devotion or because of superstition. Now, how are you going to figure out whether it is devotion or superstition? It's pretty simple. If experience leads to insecurity, fear, these aspects, then that essentially ends up in superstition. But the experience, if it nurtures gratitude and respect, then that leads to devotion. Anyways, summing it up all, this is the universal truth and the pattern as to why people worship. Now let's move to the elephant.
All right, I gotta say, I did like how he went about all that. I'm gonna have to split this into 2 parts because this is just too much, and I ended up, I think, speaking half the time. But I gotta say, I really did like it because I was kind of worried because I kind of skipped ahead to make sure the audio was working okay. And then I saw he was talking about Abraham, and I'm just like, okay, let's see how it goes. Then he starts it off with being absolutely respectful. And it's like, this is not what he's condoning. Is that the right word? Condoning is like the destruction of historical artifacts, of other people's beliefs, of what they see, of what they believe. It's like, yeah, absolutely. That should be condemned. That should be absolutely despised, because you never want to destroy something that's been there. It's like those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. Like you keep everything there. You want to learn from everything. I mean, like I said before, how many times have we had to relearn things in history or in science because people refused to accept it from a different perspective? They had to wait till they learned it themselves, even though they were probably hundreds, thousands of years behind other cultures that had discovered things way a long time ago. I mean, what? Surgery had been done in what was considered third world nations before the West even started it, before the Western cultures started it. I mean, that's the thing, is like things were far more advanced, but because either the ideologies were different, or the skin color was different, or just people thought completely differently, or just felt superior. Like the superiority mindset is, like, I think, one of the worst. And let's be honest, everyone falls guilty to that. I fall guilt to that. You fall guilt to that. Probably not as much as me, but everyone does. Everyone does fall guilt to that. I mean, heck, it's my fiance that always has to bring me to heel, because it's like, you're being an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, probably. Most of the time, let's be honest. But yeah, oh my gosh, I like how he brought it up, because I was so confused when he brought up the sun, and I was just like, no. And then he brings it up. It was like, imagine if you were growing up at this point in time and you didn't know any better. Well, this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. Oh, yeah, I like it. And the other side of the coin, the insecurity, fear, superstition. Oh, I like it. I like how he's bringing it down. Sure, I won't agree with everything, but then again, we're not supposed to agree on everything. We're supposed to learn and see other perspectives, and I find that fascinating, because I'm pretty sure people got mad at me just for saying the first part of this. The first few seconds, they're all like, oh, this white man's an idiot. And you are right. You are absolutely right. Thank you all for watching. Talk to you next time. Doodles.